I would totally agree with that critique.
So he's basically just saying what's purely evident. And we always talk about showing, not saying. But what I don't understand is they are showing, not saying, but then they follow it up by saying it out loud.
Are you looking forward to actually watching season 2 now? Because again, you said you were dragging your feet getting to the first episode here. You've always talked on this podcast that you didn't really like season 1. It's one of your least favorite Disney shows. How do you feel now, though? Welcome to Backseat Directing,
where we talk about movies, TV shows, comics, and more.
We're your hosts,
Andrew
and Loki.
We put out new episodes every Monday and Thursday.
And on today's episode, we're reviewing episode 1 of season 2, Loki.
Smooth. 3, 2, 1,
action.
So, to anyone who is just listening, Arron introduced himself as Loki because we're currently dressed up as Loki and his variant Sylvie.
Yes.
I have
we're very elaborate. I'm wearing a full suit, and I got the horns, and I got the Spectre. So we're decked out here.
Yeah, it's a really advanced, expensive cosplay. But
yeah.
That said, my horns.
I'm just projecting that I'm wearing a backseat directing shirt.
My horns on my head are an extra small, and my head is an extra large. So
you're so smart.
I'm gonna take that off. It's
so smart.
In my skull.
All the knowledge.
All right, now I can put my hat back on and get into position. So we're gonna talk about Loki season 2, episode 1. As Arron mentioned, we're going to start off with kind of a recap for those of us since it's been a while. So a recap for Loki season 1, and then we're planning to go from there into some source code, some origins for Loki the character.
Yeah. It's been forever since we've had some source code.
We do source code very sparingly here and there, but it's a segment where we go over the original source material for a character or a story. So we'll be going through that for Loki, and then we'll really get into the show and breaking it down the first episode. So I watched a recap for season 1 of Loki. So do you want me to go through that, or do you want to talk about season 1?
Yeah, I do. So I didn't watch season 1 recap or even the season itself before I watched episode 1. So it took me a second to kind of remember everything that was going on, because a lot of confusing stuff happened in season 1. You know, like this is where like the multiverse really started to happen for the MCU. So there was a lot of stuff that happened that if you don't remember season 1, you might be a little confused when you start season 2. Yeah. They do have like a little recap in the beginning, but it's pretty brief recap. I feel like it could have been a little more in depth.
Yeah, it only covered like the very bare bones.
Yeah. I wish it would have like showed us a little bit more of where they left off, because they really like picked up right where season 1 ended.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and dive into season 1. What happened?
Okay, so starting off, we'll go all the way back to Avengers 2012, Loki's origins. Loki's trying to take over New York. He ultimately fails and is captured by the Avengers, but through a series of cosmic happenstance, during the Avengers Endgame, we see an alternate timeline branch created where Hulk ends up going down the stairs. As he flies through the door, he ends up leading to a bunch of disarray and confusion where the Tesseract comes free, and Loki's able to pick it up from the ground and escape, creating a branching timeline where he is now alive because technically in the canon MCU, the main timeline, Loki is killed by Thanos in Avengers Infinity War in the opening. So this is where Loki season 1 opens off, where he comes into this branch timeline. He thinks he's escaped and gotten free, but he's very quickly met with this new force, the TVA, or the Time Variance Authority, where they all show up armored with pruning sticks, or time sticks as I think they call them as well. They appear to prune the variant Loki. He is able to slightly evade them, but he ends up being captured. He's taken back to the TVA, where he discovers this whole society basically outside of time. They're constantly saying time works differently here because they are outside of time. And we get throughout the MCU hints that it's related to the quantum realm as well. Now that's where he meets Mobius, played by Owen Wilson, which is a big part of the show. That's where he meets Hunter B-15, who's a big part of the show as well. And they explain that the TVA is this organization run by the Timekeepers, meant to prevent branching timelines, to keep the sacred timeline safe, because they believe that if timelines branch out, it'll create chaos and essentially destroy the time-space continuum in the universe. Now, Loki is brought onto the team by Mobius, who tells him that they need his help with a very important mission to catch an actual variant of himself. Now, this variant Loki is hiding out at various climactic or end of the world apocalyptic events in history, because when you hide in those apocalyptic events, because there's no chance for time to be altered since everything there is about to be destroyed, you're safe from being detected by the TVA. So she's hopping around, or we come to find because at that point it's a plot twist, but they go to a giant superstorm. There's, I believe, a shopping mart, a giant super hurricane, and they go in there to find the alternate version of Loki. They find out that it is a female version of Loki, who we'll come to know is named Sylvie. Loki and her kind of recognize that they have a similar plan. Loki wants to work with her because he wants to usurp the timekeepers of the TVA, recognizing that it may be the most powerful force in the universe. He sees a chance to seize power and become the ultimate power rather than just leading Earth or leading, the solar system, Midgard. But she doesn't want to work with him. He wants to work with her. He ends up taking her to another apocalyptic event in 2077. The Earth is being destroyed because the moon is crashing into it, but he takes her away there to escape the TVA again. Now he wants them to work together, but because their device is destroyed, they end up being forced to work together to try and survive and get off of this apocalyptic event they've trapped themselves in. They end up kind of forming a teammate. There's kind of the brewing of a relationship there between the two of them. A very interesting aspect to the season 1 story, because it is essentially himself. But they escape.
I mean, let's be real. You would date yourself if you could.
I mean, I'm the best person I know. But they end up getting captured by the TVA. They leave that apocalyptic event. They are being questioned. They find out that ultimately Loki finds out that all of the people who work at the TVA are variants themselves, who have been plucked from their timeline and plucked from their potential branch lives, have their memory wiped, and are now being used as agents by the TVA. So he tries to unveil the secret to them. They try to confront the timekeepers, but the villain of the season, is it Ravonna? I almost said Ravencroft. Ravenclaw. Is it Ravonna Ravencroft? But the villain of the first season, I believe her name is Ravonna.
Ravonna Renslayer.
Renslayer. Yeah, they even said it in the new first episode.
Yep.
So she ends up fighting against them. They unveil that the timekeepers are actually robots, that they were figureheads, basically. So now they're wondering who is really the timekeepers, who is really the head of the TVA. And in doing so, Mobius gets pruned, and then eventually Loki gets pruned, but they find out that when they get pruned, they don't actually get disintegrated or die. They get sent to the kind of end of time, or the void. And so Sylvie prunes herself to get there to save Loki. She runs into Morbius. It's Morbin time.
Yes.
She runs into Mobius.
Same universe. Kind of.
And yeah, Sony. She runs into Mobius. They go looking for Loki. Loki's been in the void. He found a group of Lokis, all the variant versions of himself. And when they eventually team up, they have to fight this giant cloud or redirect it so they can get to the person behind it all. They get to the giant castle at the end of time, where they find He Who Remains, who we know to be the last standing Kang. Eventually, we know to be the last standing Kang of the Kang Wars. He unveils the secrets of the timeline, that originally he was a scientist who traveled to alternate versions to form the Society of Kangs, meet a bunch of alternate versions of himself. War broke out competing between them, and he ultimately decided that he would destroy all branching timelines and defend one sacred timeline to make sure that himself, the alternate versions of Kangs, don't destroy the universe. So it's basically the battle of evils that he presents them with. We're killing endless people who branch off into time. We have to kill them in order to prevent alternate versions of himself from being created in branching timelines and taking over the universe. So it's either the villainy of killing all these innocent people or the potential destruction of the universe. And he presents them with that choice. And also importantly, we see Miss Minutes here. We're knowing that connecting the Time Variance Authority to being controlled by Kang ultimately. Sylvie and Loki fight because Loki is not sure of the options that presented with them. Loki pronounces his love for Sylvie. She kisses him, but ultimately kicks him out of a time door, and she's left there with He Who Remains. She stabs him, and then we see in the background all the alternate universes being split and branches being formed. Loki runs to Mobius and B-15, but is confronted with the realization that he's in an alternate time or timeline or reality where now Kang has complete control, and we can see the giant Kang figurehead statue. That's the end of season 1 where we pick off.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
That a lot happened.
I tried to be detailed without being too detailed.
I think you did a good job.
Yeah.
I think you did a good job explaining kind of the ins and outs. Now I feel ready to go into season 2. But even before that, we saw Kang also in Ant-Man Quantumania. We got to see kind of his character's backstory a little bit more and kind of developed as like this villain. But again, it's a different version of Kang. What does he call himself in that one? Is it just Kang?
Yeah, he's called Kang. I think Kang the Conqueror is.
Yeah. And then, so now we're in season 2, and we start back off where Loki is running from Mobius.
Yes. Now, do you want the source code now? Or do you want another 5-minute rant? Or do you want the source code later? The source code actually can go by pretty quick.
Okay, yeah, let's go into source code. So again, this is where we talk about the source material for whatever project we're reviewing. In this case, Loki season 2. Is the source code for like this specific storyline?
The source code is for the comic origins of Loki.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's hear it.
So the Loki is an interesting character as opposed to the source codes we normally cover, because Loki's source code could be Norse mythology, it could be Marvel Comics, or you could do Loki's source code in terms of where he started in the MCU. So I'm going to focus on the Marvel Comics. They all bleed over into one another. For the most part, I'm just going to say where he starts in the comics. Loki he first appeared in a Marvel comic created by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby in 1962, I believe it was. He first appeared in the 60s, and he obviously appears as the younger adopted brother of Thor. So in all versions of the story, whether it be Norse mythology, MCU, or comics, Odin has a son named Thor, and then he goes in his battle to fight the frost giants to Jotunheim, where he finds a young giant child in the house of Laufey, who is the leader of the frost giants. After defeating the frost giants, he takes the child home. The child's name is Loki. Now, this child is raised in the world of Asgard, raised by Odin, but he slowly grows resentment towards the society, towards Odin, and towards Thor, seeing Thor as kind of the prodigal son, the person who is meant to be the rightful ruler of Asgard, showing all these qualities that he envies and that are indicative of a true king. He shows strength and he shows adeptness in battle, but Loki kind of, for what he lacks in physical strength, he makes up for in cunning and his magical abilities. So Loki has the ability to make illusions, to shapeshift, and to do all kind of other magical, mischievous things. As he grows up, he actually becomes the god of mischief. And as his resentment grows, he eventually wants to usurp the throne, kill his brother, and potentially his father, and take over the throne of Asgard. Throughout the comics, we'll see him do things like kill Odin. Of course, Odin comes back to life. We'll see him actually meeting his goals of taking over the throne of Asgard. And then we'll see alternate variants of Loki in comics go on to be similar to the Spider Society that we see in the show, like the Crocodile Loki, Presidential Loki, Child Loki, Old Man Loki. So we get all these versions of him across comics. He's a really interesting character. In time, we've come to see him develop from simply the main rival of Thor to all kinds of roles, from being a villain to being a hero to being an anti-hero. And we've seen that bleed across the screen largely because of Tom Hiddleston's popularity in his portrayal of Loki. We've seen him continually revived, which is, interestingly, a common theme for his character in the comics as well, continually being revived. But as we go further into the episode, I have some things I want to bring up later that'll tie back to the Norse mythology. So we'll get into that as we go along.
Okay, perfect. How about before we go into actually breaking down the story of episode 1, we kind of talk about the episode's ratings, the series ratings, and we can even go into in front of and behind the camera.
Let's do it.
So the ratings for Loki is pretty high overall. Let's see, I got the highest episode for season 1 was a 9 out of 10. The season 2 episode 1 is at an 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb right now. It was nominated for I just lost my page here. It was nominated for a bunch of awards and stuff. It got nominated for 6 primetime Emmys. It ended up taking home some wins, like some Saturn Awards and stuff like that. I don't think it won any of the Emmys. But nonetheless, it's probably Disney's, Marvel's most successful show. I think WandaVision did pretty good, like critically acclaimed too.
To be clear, I think you're saying most successful Disney Plus show, right?
Correct.
Because I mean, can't
Disney.
forget about our boy.
I said Disney, Marvel, and Disney did not
Produce
make
Daredevil,
correct,
or any of the other Defender shows.
Yes. So yeah, we're excluding those. Those don't exist when talking about these shows here, because those ones are definitely the top of the list for sure. Andrew, do you have a list of the people who made this show?
Yeah, I don't know specifically which episode they're tied to, but the directors for the series, Kate Herron directed 6 episodes, so that's all in season 1. And then when it comes to season 2, we have Justin Benson directing 4 episodes, Aaron Moorhead directing 4, Dan DeLue directing 1, and Kasra Farhani, hope I'm pronouncing all those names right, directing 1 episode as well. But from what I understand, maybe some of these episodes are co-directed, because that totals up to 10 episodes.
Okay, yeah. The overall rating for the show right now on IMDb is an 8.2 out of 10. So again, pretty high. What about the people in front of the camera, Andrew?
Yes. Let's get to our cast, which this is a very interesting cast. I think that they actually do a really good job performing. I'll get to some issues in the show for myself, but mostly involve the writing in terms of my nitpicks.
Okay.
But Tom Hiddleston obviously playing Loki, and then some other variant versions of Loki as well. Sophia DiMartino plays Sylvie. Owen Wilson, as I mentioned, plays Mobius. I really hope I can get close to pronouncing this name right, but this is a villain from season 1, Ravonna Renslayer, we already mentioned. Juju Mbatha-Raw, and Tara Strong voices Miss Minutes. Eugene Cordero plays Hunter K5E, or Casey. And Hunter B15 is played by, hope I'm pronouncing this right as well, I'm not positive, but Wunmi Masaku. And wow, Masaku does such an incredible job, especially in this first episode. I thought that she was the highlight performance of this episode and did a really good job. New character playing Ouroboros, or OB, as they affectionately nickname him in this season, is Kihoi Kwan.
There's a lot of good acting in this first episode.
Yes. And then playing Kang is Jonathan Majors.
Yes. What did you think about the overall quality of season 2, episode 1, in terms of production, acting, performance? Not talking about the story just yet.
I actually would say that I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, even when they open up the episode with a recap for season 1, and even just looking at that, I was like, wow, this is a really well-produced show. It feels like the quality of maybe like Mandalorian season 1, when Disney Plus was really rocking on all cylinders.
Right.
I feel like some shows don't get as much love. Like, I'm thinking mostly of like Miss Marvel right now. I feel like maybe the production value wasn't as high. The special effects just didn't seem to have the same budget.
Or even Moon Knight. Like, they would cut away from all the parts that would have been cool.
Yeah, the coolest parts. I agree.
So,
but I definitely thought that this was really well produced and beautiful looking, and I thought pretty highly of this first episode. I'll say, like, my opening statement for the review of the episode would be that I went into it really dragging my feet, didn't want to watch it at all, watched it for the show because you were like, we're going to have to cover it, and you liked the first season.
Yep.
And so I watched it for you in the show, and I was really enjoyed this episode. I just watched it this morning, but as I'm recording this, and so that's like, what did the episode come out like last Thursday? So that's how much I was dragging my feet, and I really enjoyed the first episode. I thought it was really good. What were your thoughts?
I enjoyed it a lot too. I think going back to like the production of everything, all the effects, the special effects, the practical effects, they all looked amazing. And then the thing that I like a lot about this show is just it's like heavily stylized. You know, it's kind of got its own look that's separate from the MCU as a whole. You know, the MCU looks very like real world. You know, the color grade, the colors that you see, the props that you see, for the most part, is all like just real world stuff, real colors that you would see, and all this other stuff. But this has like a heavy style to it. You know, you got a lot of teal and aquas coming in, you know, and like they have a lot of yellows,
Purples,
you know,
are really
and greens for Loki, you know, green, purple. So I feel like the look of it looks really fantastic.
Oh, and then the retro aesthetic for all the tech and the
Yep.
TVA, the bureaucratic look mixed with like all the retro materials is very creative. Like the tape recorder in this episode was
Right.
really nice to see.
Yeah, it's like a different style. Like I said, like a lot of the stuff in the MCU, if it's not just on Earth, it's all like futuristic, you know. But this kind of goes the opposite way, which is really cool to see on screen. And they do a great job. I think the actors did phenomenal in this episode.
There were some lines that were hard to sell.
That's fair.
I wrote them down. if
That's
you wanna
fair.
hear them.
Okay, yeah. But I think Owen Wilson did a great job. He's just a great actor, you know, like just like the little lines and stuff that he says, like he pulls it off really well. And his chemistry with Tom Hiddleston is really good on camera, you know, on screen. Like it seems like they've built a good relationship, both in real life, but then also like their characters on screen, you know. They have good banter back and forth that I like. So let's hear some of the writing stuff that you have
So
a
I
little
wrote
bit
down
of issue with.
I wrote down some lines that I did like and some lines that I didn't like.
Okay.
So my least favorite line from this episode was definitely "Just a second ago, you didn't know me," which is from Loki, and it's when one of the first times that he time travels.
Yeah.
And it's just so expository, so on the nose, and just a goofy writing line. My problem with all these lines is that they're overly expository and treat the audience like they can't get a clue. So they're all from Loki. The other two are "I was in the past," and the other one is "It's the future." So he's basically just saying what's purely evident. And we always talk about showing, not saying. But what I don't understand is they are showing, not saying. But then they follow it up by saying it out loud as if to like
when he
handhold the
wrote
audience.
wrote the thing.
That was showing it because
Yeah.
he wrote it in the dust and it was still there, which means it happened in the past. And then the dent on the floor was a really good example of showing that floor had been damaged in the past and now he's in the future in the same place.
Yeah.
You know, because it'd be an odd coincidence for that same dent to be in the same spot in an alternate world.
I understand saying it there because that was the first time that we really like saw the time jump or whatever. But then like later when he said like, "I'm in the future," it's like, yeah, we know.
But also he said out loud to him, "Just a second ago, you didn't know me." And it's like, who are you saying that to? Like yourself? All these lines are him talking to himself, which is what I don't like about them and how they're overly.
He could have said like, "You don't know who I am,"
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like he's still talking to that person that doesn't recognize him anymore.
Well, that line wouldn't totally make sense because now he did know him because he goes to the
Right.
future and the guy says, "Loki." And it's like, okay, obviously,
right.
it's obvious
right.
to everyone now that he knows who you are. You don't have to like call attention to it like that. There's already been the line where he's like, "Loki, that tells us." So it's too much. And
Yeah.
it's small stuff.
Maybe he could be like, "So now you know who I am."
Yeah.
Kind of like being sarcastic, like annoyed.
yeah,
Maybe that would have played
be,
off
and that'd be
better.
more fitting to the character.
Right.
I think there's a lot of stuff.
It's like, "Oh, thanks. Now you know who I am."
When they have to write 6 episodes of them, I think there comes up a decent amount of stuff that's like not fitting to the Loki character. I mean, him and Thor have both changed a lot, but this is 2012 Loki, or it's supposed to be.
Right.
So he doesn't still have that like cocky bravado. He's a lot more like everyman and like approachable, I feel like. I mean, he still has like the self-love, but it's just not worn on his sleeve like it was from the 2012 Loki.
Right.
Like, I'm royalty, don't touch me kind
That's
of Loki.
definitely a good point to think of. Like, what Loki are we seeing on screen? Because this isn't the Loki that we kind of developed with. This is the Loki at his first iteration that we, or I guess second on-screen iteration that we really saw of him in the first Avengers, where he was the main villain.
The Infinity War Loki has been humbled a lot.
Right.
So it makes sense for him to maybe change a little bit.
Yeah.
Like we've seen
He's
him,
lost already.
We've seen him lose a lot.
Yeah.
And we've seen him like lose his mom and like and then eventually his dad. So he's had a lot of like time to change.
I would totally agree with that critique for Loki in this season, or even season 1 too. But what else do you got?
To be fair, I did write down lines that I liked a lot.
Okay.
Which my favorite line in the episode was, "I have no memory of having my memory wiped," from Mobius. Because like you said, he's really good at selling those little lines. The show overall in this first episode is showing me that it's like really good with the humor. Like the thing I laughed at in the trailer we see in this episode where he tapes over the crack on the, he's like, how am I supposed to hustle in this, like
There.
like that. And that
I also liked when OB was like, "I don't have one of those made here." And then he's like, I do. And he just pulls it up as literally right next to him. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. I laughed out loud for that.
That's my favorite sequence in the whole episode
Yeah.
because of the way it's edited.
Yeah.
Of a conversation taking place in the past.
It was very good, right?
Updating his memory in
Yeah.
the future. Yeah. Plus, like the way they shot it too, he was not wearing glasses in the past. So anytime you saw Kiyoy Kwan's character, OB, it was evident which one you were seeing because he was not wearing glasses in the past and wearing glasses in the future.
Yeah. And the set looked slightly different too. But
just an obvious clue like that is really useful. And it's like a small thing that you wouldn't bother you, you know?
Even Mobius, when he was like, yeah, I came and I stayed a while, remember? And he's like, no, you left right away.
So I have an interesting theory about that line, which my theory is, it might be an obvious guess, but I think that he just hasn't done that yet. So we're going to, in the future episodes, see Mobius time travel, get down there, go to see him, and then he's going to make up the excuse, oh, sorry, I got off on the wrong floor, and turn around and leave.
Yeah.
And that's why he doesn't remember it, but Kiyoy Kwan does.
Right.
Also, Obi remembers it because it's like he said, he hasn't seen anyone else in 400 years. So that's why he has a clear recollection of the one time he's seen somebody.
Right.
Whereas Mobius has had tons and tons of interactions. But the other two lines that I really liked are both from Obi. He says like, we have to do it now. And then he says, well, now, but now isn't for a little bit. So like this line and the other one, which is you've got about an hour, and then the explosion, you've got about 5 minutes. They both highlight kind of the subjective nature of time, how, time can be stretched and strained, and how your perspective shift can change how long time is perceived. Because time is really a construct, like everyone says. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a philosopher, but time is something we made up to measure what we experience, what our brain experiences, our brain. And so an hour we might perceive, if you blindfolded somebody, put them in a trunk, an hour might be perceived as 3 hours.
Or we sit down at this table and we're like, hey, let's do a 30-minute episode.
And then we do it for 2
hour
hours.
and a half later, we're like, oh, we should probably wrap this up.
Exactly that. So I think it's really cool how Obi's lines, which is a theme of the show, obviously the season with time travel, highlight the perspective-based nature of time, which is like, oh, now you have 5 minutes. I also laughed out loud at that line because the explosion, he's like, you have 5 minutes.
Yes.
He delivers them so well too. He's so dry. Kiyoy Kwan's really, really good. And then also subjective nature of time's highlighted in his counting when he's doing the countdown, but he clearly doesn't want to abandon Loki.
Yeah,
he's
3,
5, 4, 3,
yep.
3, 3. So it's really highlighted in the show, which I think is a cool aspect. Now, while we're talking about Obi, I did want to delve into his character a little bit more with another theory.
All right, yeah, let's hear your theory about Obi.
Let me get your feedback on this. So Obi
Sucks.
Listen first. So Obi's name is obviously said a couple times in the show. His actual name's Ouroboros, which it
comes in threes, by the way. Like Brooke was talking about this yesterday, my wife. She's like, I have never heard this word besides for this week, and it's come up 3 times. And it's because someone she knows is getting a tattoo of that, which is the snake that's eating itself.
Tail.
And it's never ending, right? And then in a book that she's reading, it also came up into that story. Yeah. And then here in Loki, it's coming up as this guy's name. And she's like, that's crazy. Like, I've never heard of this word before. And now it's just like flooding at me.
It always does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
so go ahead.
Ouroboros triggered a memory in me because I remember it from Shameless being mentioned as the snake that eats its own tail, which is Kevin, I think, gets a tattoo of it in Shameless. But Ouroboros, as you mentioned, is the iconic imagery of the snake in the circle eating its own tail, going on and on forever. Now, this originated in ancient Egypt. The first place it's ever seen in history is in the tomb of Tutankhamun. There is a picture of a snake eating its own tail, but it's mythology that traveled throughout history. Now, it went to the Greeks, where it was popularized there, and then eventually we do see it in Norse mythology. Now, the snake who eats his own tail, the Ouroboros, is manifested in Greek mythology under Jormungandr, or it's come to be known as other names such as the World Serpent or the Midgard Serpent. In Norse mythology, Jormungandr is actually the child of a giant named Angrboda and Loki. Loki and Angrboda have 3 children: Fenrir, the wolf that we see in Ragnarok; Hel, which is portrayed as their sister in Ragnarok; and the middle child, Jormungandr, or the World Serpent. Now, Jormungandr actually grows so big that it wraps around the entire earth in Norse mythology to the point where it's able to touch its own tail with its mouth. And the symbol of the Ouroboros, or Jormungandr, is the symbol of many things throughout history. It could include life and death, or infinity, or it also is a symbol of fertility or a symbol of nourishment, because the idea is that as the snake eats its own tail, it's nourished by food and continually able to create more of itself, so that as it eats its tail, it creates more and continues on and on and on in a loop forever, for eternity. Although the other thing that I'm interested in for the Ouroboros is that since it's tied to Jormungandr, the world serpent is actually a villain or an enemy combatant to Thor in Norse mythology. So this could potentially, in my eyes, be a hint via his name, not only being related to time, because that's a theme that we see throughout the show with people like Mobius. The Mobius strip is a symbol for infinity also. But it could also be a hint that he, as an antagonist to Thor in Norse mythology, could be a villainous character later on in the series of Loki season 2. What do you think? It'd be
That's a lot.
pretty big twist on the role for Kioi Kwan, right? Don't you think that would interest you to want to sink your teeth into?
Yeah, especially like how lovable he was in this first episode.
It would be a twist. It'd be something new for him to play, because I feel like he's never played as an actor like a villain or a hateable character.
Right.
Like a betrayer.
Yeah, and I think he definitely has the audience's trust.
Yes. But here's part of why I think it's hard to believe, and tell me what you think. The countdown we mentioned earlier, he counts 3, 3, 3, indicating to us that he really doesn't want to abandon or kill Loki. If it had only showed him convincing Mobius to leave him behind, then it'd be a better expectation writing-wise that he was going to be a villain. And it would still be pretty subtle, I think. But he just seems himself to not want to leave Loki behind either. So do you think that indicates he's not going to be a villain? Maybe I'm overthinking it and drawing my ties back thousands of years to Norse mythology.
I mean, it's definitely a good connection that you did there. I feel like for the show itself, though, that they're going to kind of focus and or wrap up some things with King, or He Who Remains, or whichever version is now in this timeline. But man, he could be. It'd
be cool. It'd be super cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he could be like someone who gets in their way at some point.
I'd feel cool if I called it.
Yeah.
But I mean, historically in Greek mythology, Jormungandr is the main component, the main opponent to Thor, and their journey ends between the two of them as them simultaneously killing one another. Thor strikes Jormungandr and kills it, where as his dying breath, Jormungandr shoots a blast of venom onto Thor that also kills him. Their fates entwined and they die together. But also interesting for Jormungandr in Norse mythology, he at Ragnarok, he is sent back in time to where he is sent back before his own birth, which is yet another example of him being connected with infinity and the circle, the loop of time, is that his life is basically a paradox where during Ragnarok, or the end of the world in Norse mythology, he's sent back before his birth and then born and then continuing on and on forever in a circle as a paradox. So there's a lot of cool. This is why I told you I got sent down into a rabbit hole, because I was literally just listening to Norse mythology videos on the way here. Which, thanks to, I'm gonna find his name. His name was John something. I'm gonna pull that up here real quick. John Solo. John Solo. Thanks to John Solo's channel for helping me out, and thank you to Man of Recaps for helping me out too with the Loki season 1 recap.
Yeah, something that makes me excited about this show, like on a personal level, is that my wife actually enjoys watching the show, and you know her; she doesn't like watching anything.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to watch the show with her. We actually
the Sylvie to your
to my Loki. Yeah, we actually waited till last night to watch it because we had work all last week, and then she was out of town.
It's
this
good to
weekend.
watch it fresh though too.
So we watched it together last night, and when it was over, she was like, "What? That's it? I feel like I've been watching this for 5 minutes."
Something she really likes, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good tell that the pacing for the episode was really good.
It was breakneck pacing for the episode.
A lot of stuff happened. There wasn't any fluff in there, but at the same time, we got to learn about some new characters. We got to learn about some new plots that are being set up for the rest of the season. So I think that this show was edited and paced really well, even though that maybe some of the story points or lines or whatever maybe don't hit for you. But the pacing, I feel like you can't argue. The editing, you can't argue, especially when they're jumping back from time to time. And I also think the effect of him glitching out looks phenomenal.
Oh, it definitely seems inspired by the glitching in Into the Spider-Verse, the first Spider-Verse movie, which is cool. And the jokes around it were really funny too. Surrounding it doesn't look that bad.
Yeah.
And then the pan, like, I always
Pan to the other lady. Yeah.
pan to the other lady.
Yeah, that was funny. I believe that was a pan, though.
It was a pan, you're right. Yeah.
rotated.
After I said it, I had to think about it because I was like, have I been calling everything a pan my whole life? But yeah, then the dollying shot was another one of my favorite shots. It's a backwards dolly that when they're going down the hallway, they're moving backwards following Obi, and there's two of them because there's a cut in between where he opens the door. But they're really, really cool. You get that over-the-shoulder book throw where Tom Hiddleston just like snags it. Super smooth, super cool. So the whole theme of that shot was just smoothness, and it felt very like satisfying as a viewer.
Yeah.
So that was one of my favorite shots in the episode. But my absolute favorite was the side view of him on that walkway where the background was just like those, like the pinks of the multiverse, like exploding in the background. So beautiful.
And everything, like all the objects that were in this, I don't know, space-like area were like kind of fading away.
Yeah, being aged, really.
Yeah.
It was like time was sucking it up. He was saying how the suit would like age into dust or something like that.
Yeah.
And skin would be peeled away.
Right.
Skin question mark. The show is funny. It is funny. It's enjoyable.
I agree.
And visually super stunning. I love the rustic aspects. I love their vibrant use of colors, like how a room will be themed to a color. The mural was really cool. The mural of the timekeepers that was hiding the past, which is cool because it's a physical manifestation of like walling over the past.
Right.
You know, literally like they covered it up literally and figuratively. So really cool too to have the Kang faces behind that when he pruned
Which Loki could have just used his magic to reveal that.
I want to say too,
like,
that was one of my complaints. He used no special skills in this episode.
Yeah,
He's just a person.
As soon as he stole the probe thing from the villain guy or whatever, the guard, I was like, why did he do that? Why didn't he just? But like he's the god of mischief. That wall is literally like displaying something that's not there. You know, like it's hiding something. Like he can't just move that wall.
His power should be to cut through mischief too,
right,
to the source. But he didn't use powers at all. There was nothing that, besides surviving that fall into the truck, there was nothing that indicated to me. I thought maybe he was going to catch it as it was falling the truck, like a Captain America-esque, like save that woman.
To be fair, I feel like we really don't get to see him use his powers a lot in the MCU either. The main time that we do is like with the Spectre, you know, like where he's using the Tesseract to like shoot blasts and stuff. Like he's not really using his powers a lot other than like a mirror image of himself or mirroring what he's wearing.
That's what I don't love about the character, though, is like we see him. Why are you creating these little knives and then fighting with knives? Why? Like he changes his appearance. The main thing we see him do is shapeshift throughout the entire series, or create a
god of mischief. That makes sense.
But like, do more. Like you're like the god of mischief. Do more in terms of you're in the MCU. Is my personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily took anything away from this episode. But it does like just leave that question of like, why didn't you use your powers? You know, like if we had powers, we would probably use them, right? Like, especially if you're not like hiding a secret identity or anything, you know, there's no reason for you not to use powers. And we just don't really have a good grasp on what his limitations are. Yeah, that's like maybe there's a limitation on his power that we don't know about or should know about, that explains why he's not always using his powers, you know, like.
Yeah, I was just complaining at the end of the episode to Sierra too when we finished it that I think it was like B-15 was like, they're sending all these people for Sylvie. It's like, why are you surprised? Like, if she's a variant of Loki, then she's a god.
Right.
Like, would you be surprised if they sent 15 people to go after Thor? Like, they're brothers. So Loki should be
from another mother.
Yeah. But they're seen as, you know, but as in comics and in Norse mythology as rivals.
Right.
So he should be able to stand toe to toe.
Almost took over New York.
Yeah. So I just think that he's not viewed as a threat and he's not shown as enough of a threat.
Yeah.
Like he's like it's cool for him to have to trick his way into stuff, but there should be an underlying base level of like godly strength as well.
Right. Like I feel like they showed that a little better in season 1, you know, because they're like trying to chase this variant, like, and this variant is you know, like, and it's wrecking havoc across the universe, multiverse or whatever, you know, like they made it seem like how powerful Loki is or a Loki can be.
Yeah, right now they're trying to build up Kang, which is that line is really obvious too, where it's like he isn't that like a little bit too on the nose? The name, he's like, it's not if you can back it up. So like,
Yeah.
they're trying to build him up, but like, you got to build up your main character.
What do you think's going to happen with Kang? I know there's a little bit of controversy around Jonathan Majors and stuff, but like, how do you think Disney's going to handle this? I saw an interesting fact about Loki season 2. It's the first MCU project that didn't have any reshoots. None.
Which you would think there'd be some. I mean, we already didn't see Jonathan Majors' face in the whole first episode, other than statues,
Right.
and the recap.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I was thinking that too. I was talking to Sierra about it after we ended the episode as well. Of what are like, far along do you have to be in a financial commitment for Marvel to draw like a moral line in the stand? Because there's been no,
he hasn't been convicted.
There's been no convicted guilt. And I was not there. I don't speak one way or the other. I'm trying to like, you know.
We don't know all the details. There's supposedly evidence going the opposite way.
I tend to want to like. I tend to want to side with the victim in these situations.
Yeah, unlike
unlike
Jonathan or Johnny Depp, like they're keeping this under wraps. You know, this trial has not been publicized. You know, and it also feels like their court date has been pushed quite a bit as well. So. Yeah, it's really hard to decide like what's going to happen legally, but what is Disney going to do? Because this is a problem right now for them, right?
So I looked it up. What we're getting with Loki season 2 is a 6-episode run. All the episodes are around 20, 30 minutes, and we're going to have it every Thursday night. It's supposed to be coming out on Disney Plus at 6 p.m. So we've got 5 more weeks of this.
Yep.
And we still don't really know where Jonathan Majors stands. You know, there's basically a month right now between now and the end of the show, and no reshoots.
Yeah, and the fact that there's no reshoots, it means that whatever happened with Kang in this story was the original plan.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's to have him in it a lot, maybe he's in 4 episodes, or maybe he's not in any.
Yeah, and I'm not wanting to like necessarily ruin the show and look up on IMDb to see how many episodes he's credited for or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, I was just gonna do that actually, but if you don't want me to, I won't. But if you actually look on IMDb, his name is not on there.
Well, that's another interesting factoid. Oh, it's down. Yeah.
I don't even. Oh, there it is, way down here.
Do you know the answer now?
It looks like I know the answer now.
You want to say it? Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Andrew? Andrew, it looks like he is only in season 1 for the 1 episode.
Okay, I did not hear any of that. How loud was my covering up my ears? Was it annoying?
I could not hear you covering up your ears, so you did a good job.
Okay, good.
Could you hear me?
I can.
Did you read my lips?
What I do is, I don't know if anyone else does this, but you like take the little fold of your ear and you push it in and out really fast so that.
Pro tip.
Yeah, that's how you quietly make yourself unable to determine what they're saying. Is there anything else you want to talk about related to Jonathan Majors? I don't know whether to hope he's in the show or not, because I don't really know if he's guilty or not. If he's not guilty, then sure, I hope he's in the show. I mean, before all this happened, I thought he was a great guy, and I was very excited for his rise of his career.
I mean, you know how I felt about him, especially in the beginning of the year when Creed 3 came out. Like, I was riding the Jonathan Majors high, you know, like I was all on board. This guy is awesome.
And then if he is guilty, it's like, damn it, why can't we just have one person
but like
stay cool?
Maybe he's not, but if he is, like, screw that guy, you know, like if
he is, if he is, then he shouldn't be in the position of, I mean, even playing a villain, it's like you shouldn't be in that position. It's too much bolstering up, rewarding somebody who did something horrible, if that's the case.
Yeah, if he's found guilty, for sure.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be in the projects anymore that he's been signed to. But if he's not, then it's like, man, that woman messed up his whole career.
Yeah. Put it in jeopardy at the very least. I mean, he
lost so much from it. I know he lost 2 Army deals, like with commercials for the Army, and obviously all the Marvel projects are kind of up in the air. I think he had another like movie or something that he was working on.
You hope he's not guilty, because you hope that didn't truly happen to her, and you hope that he wouldn't do something so horrible.
Right.
But I'm hoping at least that the truth will come out and we'll know one way or the other.
Yeah, definitely. Let's pivot back to Loki. Is there anything else you want to say? Like, Are you looking forward to actually watching season 2 now? Because again, you said you were dragging your feet getting to the first episode here. You've always talked on this podcast that you didn't really like season 1. It's one of your least favorite Disney shows. How do you feel now, though?
I have never felt truly in love with the characters in the show. I think now, after watching the first episode, I am really excited for upcoming episodes of Loki season 2.
Okay.
Hopefully it keeps me on that steam train.
Go.
Having Kioi Kwan in it helps a lot.
Yeah.
I really like his new character of Obi. B-15 had a great scene in this episode that made me like her a lot more.
Yep.
Mobius is awesome. And I think Tom Hiddleston does a good job, but it's just not my favorite portrayal of Loki that he's done so far. So hopefully that changes too. But he's awesome. I love Tom Hiddleston. He's the freaking man. So I'm absolutely in love with the set design. You know, their use of colors throughout the show, their creative techniques with cameras. They did so much cool camera stuff in this episode. Like they did like a long take where they showed Loki talking to, what is his name? Talking to the TVA agent who didn't recognize him. He's Pillboy from The Good Place. That's how I know him. I call him Pillboy.
That's not Casey, is it?
No, I think it might be Casey.
Okay.
Yeah, they do like kind of a long take there, which is awesome. The shots in the elevator are really creative use of a tight space.
Yep.
That backwards dollying shot that I talked about, the shots out in the colorful universe.
Yeah.
Speaking of like that colorful big scape of the sacred timeline, I wanted to talk again about how the show continually links itself to Norse mythology. Because when you look at the sacred timeline, the only thing that my mind can think of is Yggdrasil, which is also called the World Tree. It's a thing in Norse mythology that connects the 9 realms, and it ties to the sacred timeline because the sacred timeline basically connects all the alternate timelines and universes. And when it branches out, literally branches like a tree, it begins to like look like roots of a tree, which is where the World Tree connects. You know, the World Tree has all these roots and then branches out into the 9 realms. So I feel like they're constantly tying this back because it's tied to Loki, constantly tying it back to Norse mythology with things like whether it be small things like the Ouroboros or big things like the sacred timeline, like a clever name here and there. I think that they're really, really, like sometimes there's like those little slips in the writing, which happens to, I think they're slips, opinion based, but it happens when you have multiple writers on the show. Sometimes some cheesy dialogue gets through or some overly expositional dialogue.
Let's be honest. It also happens because it's a Disney project.
Yeah. Fair. I think it's really cool. The minds behind this, they're very clever with the naming, with the details, with the Norse mythology, with the cleverness of the conversation and the amazing edit of the conversation with Obi is just so much fun. I was watching it thinking like, man, this feels like something special, like watching this. Like, this is good. I really, really like this scene. And just like his memory updating as he talks to past Loki and remembering things, highlighting the nature of like memory and how it's connected to time, and like the way he would like just pick that thing up, like you said, when he remembered how Loki told him that he was going to need it.
Yep.
And then cutting back between the two conversations. It was so much fun.
Yeah. You seem genuinely excited.
Yeah.
And that's exciting for me because I really liked the first season. So now this could be something that we could keep talking about then on this podcast. I'm thinking we'll do probably episode 2 and 3 as one, and then the last 3 as another episode or some sort of combination. Probably 2 more episodes of us covering Loki. And we'll, again, do a bunch of episodes kind of in once. We didn't directly talk about the story in detail, but we kind of slipped it in there through the rest of our conversations because we are professional podcasters. We don't have to break down every little thing about the show, or at least every little story beat, because the audience probably just watched the show.
And they probably don't need to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything else that you want to add for our Loki episode?
I mean, I thought it was really cool. The main plot of the episode being to repair his like damaged connection to the timeline.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm worried I'm going to like it less now that Sylvie's back because I don't like that relationship dynamic or that relationship. So I'm worried about the upcoming episodes, but still hopeful. And I'm wondering if there's anything you're hopeful to see, because I'm hopeful that we'll get some like emotional tether to the lives that the variants missed out on. Like maybe them somehow getting to see the families or something. Like Sylvie's whole motivation in the first season was that she was ripped out of her timeline and taken away from like her life there and her family there. So hopefully we'll get some emotional tether to that. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, that's good. I think I would like to see kind of the confidence come back in Loki.
That's a really good. That's
the power, the confidence. Like that's the god of mischief right there. Like I would like to see a little bit of that personality come back into him. Who knows if we'll get that? We'll see. But we have a lot of exciting things coming up for our podcast, Backseat Directing. So I want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who's been watching and supporting the show. We're always excited to add new things and do new things. One of which being that D&D episode. It's coming soon, I promise. I know I keep saying that, but now it's like closer than it's ever been. So if you like Dungeons and Dragons, Andrew and I held a campaign here in this studio with a bunch of our friends. We filmed it all. We made a cool production out of it. There's a lot of cool sound design and effects and stuff. So hopefully it's a fun visual experience for everyone who tunes in for that. It's pretty long. The first episode will be 3 hours long for our part 1. So that'll be coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that. We also have something else that we're working on that we're not going to disclose in this episode, but keep an eye out. We have some cool things coming.
Cool future projects coming.
Definitely. All right. Thank you everyone so much. We post new episodes every Monday and Thursday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We post everywhere on social media, so check us out there as well. And that's a wrap.